Welcome back to the Give 'em Liam podcast on the Cover Podcast Network. Bits happened over the weekend. I actually recorded this originally on Friday night, and for a couple of reasons didn't get it out on Saturday. And so I'm actually glad I did, because it's given me some additional stuff to talk about in this podcast. But it's been a huge weekend. We've got a bit to get through. But before we do any of that, got to thank the cover.com.au. Subscribe to the newsletter, click on some links, read some articles. There's plenty of stuff going on up there. There's NBA news, NBL news, NRL news, Super Rugby news. There's probably some other stuff on there that I haven't read yet. But make sure you get across there. Make sure you follow on social media too, particularly on Instagram. Instagram seems to be where the cover is most active. So make sure you're there. Follow them, like the stuff, share the stuff. There's videos. What I have to say is I really like the aesthetic. I'm kind of a comic book guy, so I kind of like the theme. I like the colors. I like the color halftone and all of that. So, if you like that pop culture kind of stuff, I think you'll like the aesthetic. I think you'll like the way it looks. So even if you don't read it, just have it on your feed. It looks nice. It looks pretty. We're going to try to sell the cover. Thank you to riverside.fm for all your remote recording, podcasting, meeting, whatever, video meeting, whatever you need. They can do it. They do it better than most. I'm using it right now. All our other podcasts use it. So make sure, if you want to start a podcast or you're looking for a solution for your business or whatever, it's not free, I might add, but it's really, really good. Audio quality is excellent. Video quality is excellent. It can record up to 4K. I've got a terrible camera, so unfortunately you're getting me in not 4K. You're getting me in 720p. But one day I'll get a better camera, and you'll be able to see me much more clearly. But riverside.fm, if you get a chance, hit the link on our website, on the cover.com.au's website, because if you hit that link, you use that affiliate link and you pay and you buy some Riverside, we get a nice little kickback, and that's what keeps the website running. That's what allows us to do these podcasts. So do that. And without further ado, we'll get into it. A couple of things happened to me this week. One is a friend of mine put up a post from a few years ago. And I'll just read it to you because I think it's really, really good. And I've decided to build on it a little bit. So my friend who put it up, Peter Playford, I've talked about him on the podcast before. He's a former Brumbie and Waratah, I believe. Very talented footballer, but I knew him as a coach. He coached me at the Sydney Stars in 2015. He had a pretty big impact on me, probably more than he knows in a short time. But he's someone whose opinion I certainly respect, and I think once I read this to you, you'll have a similar view. So this is a post sort of talking about some of the ways in which Rugby Australia can innovate, some of the things that can be done to broaden the reach of the game. And this post he actually put up back in 2007. 2017. So it's 5 years old. And it says, as a recently retired player, coach, and administrator, and someone that has walked away from the game, I just wanted to give a small blueprint to what I think may work. Rugby is a game that is elevated more than any other code. So in the world of digital media and social and the instant world of acceptance, I would Set a KPI to ensure the top 20 contracted players got a minimum of 200,000 followers or exposure each week. 2, someone from rugby, a player, coach, administrator, volunteer, is on TV once a week, assuming national TV, national news, whatever. 3, someone from the ARU or Super Rugby was on regional TV 3 times a week, talking about Game On, Super Rugby, or getting players to do pre-recorded interviews to promote the game. 4, evolve what's happening on field, get creative, and change the way it's viewed. The key evidence for this is the BBL, the Big Bash League. Make the game an event. How we do this will take courage, but it needs it. 5, stop thinking what happens on the field is the only reason people come to games. This is a big one because your crowd attendance will show it's not. And I think in 2022 that is a particularly pertinent point. 6, live a little. Grow some courage and change the game. Yes, we are in a competitive environment, but we need to be innovative. Because if we don't, the game we love will be a memory. Aim up and elevate. Don't let people make rumors. Communicate the good, bad, and the ugly. We deserve it. Change is needed. So that post came up on my feed, and I read through it again, and I remember, I actually looked at it, and I liked it back in 2017, commented again, and said I really liked it again. Then, later in the week, I'm getting up on my soapbox now, I put up a post, and it was to congratulate another friend of mine, Christian Lilifano, on his 1,000th Super Rugby point, or scoring his 1,000th Super Rugby point. And I want to make a special shout out to you, Christian, to be able to do that, with your little boy running the tee for you and giving him a hug. That was pretty cool. I imagine he'll remember that, and I'm sure you'll remember that for the rest of your life. So shouts to you. Congratulations. 1,000 points is particularly, for anyone is a huge achievement, but particularly for you and all of the things that you've endured, all of the things that you've overcome. I think it's a real testament to who you are as a man. And I can honestly say that Christian is one of the best humans that I've come across in the world of rugby. There's lots of good humans, there's lots of great humans, but he's up there with one of the best. He always had time for us in Clubland, spent a lot of time giving back to the club, being around the club. He really invested in that. But, and some of you might not know this, but he has a foundation that he runs jointly with some people locally here in Canberra that helps Pacifica kids reach their goals, access to education, that sort of thing. So he is a very, very good human and thoroughly deserved. But anyway, I put up a post congratulating him, which, look, to be fair, it did feature a video owned by Super Rugby. It's true. Definitely you guys owned it in terms of the broadcast rights and all of that. But they blocked it. So it went up. It was maybe up for about 2 minutes. Then I got a notification that said this content has been blocked because the owner of the content has put through a copyright infringement or whatever. I'm not going to go into my phone again and read the notification, but it just kind of annoyed me. And it annoyed me for a lot of the reasons that Pete had just spoken about. So what I decided to do, this is what I do when I get annoyed, is put together a small sort of infographic. I've gone with a pyramid. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. But for those, I'll make sure I describe this as well as I can for those not on YouTube. And so I've gone with a pyramid which sort of outlines, the pyramid, the rugby pyramid, and I guess how big each section is. So you can see it there now, the rugby pyramid, broken into 4 parts. And I appreciate this is an oversimplification of what the rugby pyramid is, but this is the sort of environment that rugby kind of operates in. And I'll sort of go through it. So if we go to the first part of the pyramid, the top, the pointy end, a little bit, that's high performance rugby or high performance. And underneath that's our Wallaroos, that's our Wallabies, that's Super Rugby, Super W, World 7 Series, Uni 7 Series, and the Australian 7 setup. There's also an Olympic component, and there's the World Cups and all of that. But I guess that's the overarching picture. That only represents about 150,000 people week to week. That includes TV, streaming, attendance. So 150,000 people week to week. It's not too bad. Let's say it's 1 million people across the season, but it's generally some iteration of the same group of people. Then if we go to the next bit, which is the community rugby arm, so that's your club rugby, there's representation in every state. Club rugby, registered rugby players, coaches, administrators, teachers, volunteers, all of those people all across the country. That represents about 300,000 people. So it's a significant chunk. And the interesting thing is these are the two areas that rugby traditionally has operated in, high performance and community rugby. And I think those involved in clubland, in community rugby land, would probably say that there's not a huge involvement anymore, particularly at the Rugby Australia level for the clubs. The clubs are kind of separate. I know most of the state bodies now sit separate from the HPU with the various franchises. So most franchises have, for example, in Canberra, we have the Brumbies. That's the high performance unit. And then sitting underneath that is community rugby. So ACT and Southern New South Wales rugby, connected sort of in some of their pathways programs. So, the Super W, the Women's Academy and all that kind of sits in community rugby. But in terms of what community rugby is and what I would consider community rugby is that grassroots program. It's club footy, it's schools footy, even some of the junior representation stuff, that all sits in community rugby. And that week to week, we engage about 300,000 people. So again, maybe 2 million people across the season, maybe 1.5 million people across the season, but some iteration of the same group of people. And so now we come to, so you'll notice that's two chunks of the pyramid. And week to week, we're hitting, less than 500,000 people. So not great. Not a great start. So then if we go to the communities, now I've spoken about this before, and what I mean by communities is the places in which these teams are located and the communities or areas in which the players, coaches, administrators, staff are situated. So if we just, and I appreciate that number, 15.3 million people is what that number is what those communities represent. I appreciate we're not going to hit every single person who lives in Sydney or Brisbane or whatever, but I'm just trying to illustrate the huge chunk of the population living in these 5 capital cities, being Canberra, Melbourne, Perth, Brisbane, and Sydney. That number, 15.3 million, doesn't represent any of the kids, any of the people living in regional New South Wales, the Central West, Far North Queensland, any of that. That just represents the number of people who currently live in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Perth, or Melbourne. And that's a lot of people. And I've spoken about this before, that I don't think rugby generally, or the players or the staff, coaches, are active enough in their community. Sure, they're active enough in community rugby, and if we go back, we're including them as part of the 300,000 people involved in community rugby. Yes, great, you're involved there, but you're not involved with your communities. You're not involved with not-for-profits. You're not involved at your schools. You're not involved in, local gardens and communal spaces. You're not involved in really anything that's going on in your community. So it's really difficult for people to identify with you or connect with you, because the only time they see you is on the TV, and that's if they turn it on or they go to a game. There has to be some kind of give and take. If you want to engage those communities, you need to be doing more. Pick some charities. Get the guys on the radio. Get the guys on the TV. Get them involved in things that are non-traditional. And I appreciate it's a big job. I get it. I understand it's a massive job. But if the goal is, eyes, and we'll get to this in my last point, but if the goal is eyes on the game, just having it on free-to-air and, having the game is not enough. We need to be doing more. There's more ways you can get involved in your community. And then the final part, which I think represents the biggest opportunity here, is the digital media part down the bottom. So this is what Pete's talking about with, the 200,000 views for the top 20 contracted players and that sort of stuff. But this also includes, bloggers, independent news sources, social media pages, podcasters. We're all around the world. And I know I've got to be in my bonnet because you block some of my content, Super Rugby. And this isn't a criticism. This is a plea. Partner with us. We're all around the world. We've all got varying followings. We've all got various reaches. Partner with us. Let us use your content. Let us promote your game. Work with some of the bloggers, some of the private news sources. I understand there's issues around your broadcast and you want to control the product, but that's part of the problem. Seed control. You get the broadcast. All that money's yours. But if you want people to see the game, engage in social media. Allow that your content, the content that you've made and you've produced, allow it to be propagated. Allow it to be taken and used and remixed and all of that, because that is ultimately the power of social media. And then you add the layer on top again of bloggers, private podcasters, private news sources. That's another, I don't know what the quantifiable number is, but that's another huge opportunity to just get eyeballs on the game. And so, then if we look at it, that's kind of the picture. High performance rugby, community rugby, engaging the communities that we live in, and then the digital media landscape. And I think really we only sit currently in this area here, the high performance rugby and the community rugby. And I would say we don't even do enough in community rugby. So we've got a lot of work to do, but none of it is insurmountable, in my view. And I know that, I'm a little bit, I get down a little bit on the game and whatever, but when the average attendance at the moment is 9,000 people, one, it doesn't look good for TV, but two, and I can only speak in the Brumbies case, is home games cost them money. They don't make any money off home games, which is a problem. And then we start, and I've seen it already. We're starting to talk about smaller stadiums, boutique stadiums, but those things cost money. How are we going to pay for those things? And I guess the other question I want to ask: does a new stadium really solve the issue? I don't think it does. I've been to 1,000 rugby games. They're all the same. You boop your ticket, you walk in, you go and buy your hot dog or your pie and your warm beer, and you sit down. There's really not much. There's not much else happening, and I think that can be solved by engaging with your community. I'm sure there are people in your community who own restaurants, who own events companies, who are innovative thinkers. Engage with them. Ask them what they want. What would get those people to a game? And build an experience around what the people in your communities want. Anyway, I'm done with my rant. I just thought that it was timely, it was pertinent, and one thing I do when I get annoyed is I try and bring in all the facts and try and present it back to Super Rugby or present it back to someone in the hope that they listen. So hopefully someone listens to this and maybe, cuts a bit out of my YouTube video or takes one of the reels that I put up on Instagram and shares it, and hopefully one day it'll get back to Super Rugby and they can give me a call, and I'm happy to be involved in the transformation of rugby. That's wishful thinking, isn't it? All right, back to my favourite topic. The Brumbies might actually be the real deal. 2 weeks ago, knocked off their first New Zealand scalp, and look, I think I was always not skeptical, but I felt that they were the best team in Australia, and I think everyone would agree that. And then, now they've come out, they've knocked off the Hurricanes, they've knocked off the Chiefs. They've still got the two tough ones now. Sorry, they've knocked off the Highlanders. They've still got the two tough ones now with the Crusaders and the Blues. They got them back to back, so they'll play the Crusaders Friday, the 13th of May, and the Blues the following week. But those two games are at home, and I think all of the pressure really is on the Blues and the Crusaders in those games because there's an expectation that they will win. And I think, interestingly, the gap between the Australian and New Zealand team seems to have closed. I'm not ready to say that an Australian team's going to win Super Rugby, but I think the Brumbies could certainly do it. And I think the way the Waratahs are playing at the moment, I know they almost blew it against Moana Pacifica, but they turned it around second half and got the win. So I'll give them their props. I think the way the Waratahs are playing currently is very impressive. A huge turnaround from a year ago, and I don't think we can undervalue the impact that Darren Coleman has had on that team. And I think having Michael Hooper around has helped. I just think, the jump in performance 1 year to the next is huge. And, I think you can really attribute that. The players have had another year of development, but I think Darren Coleman has provided a really, really good environment, and an environment where players feel like they can be successful. They seem confident, to go out and make mistakes and try things, back themselves, and it's starting to pay off. So, I hate giving the Waratahs props, but they deserve their props because they've been really, really good. And I think, I think they will push now for a top. I think they probably finish fifth, but I think they finish ahead of the Reds. The Reds seem to have stagnated a little bit. And conversely, Brad Thorne, we know, can be a bit of a prickly character. So, maybe some of that influence and some of the challenges he's had this year with the leak out of Rugby Australia and some of the things he's been dealing with in the media are having an impact on his playing group. Particularly someone like Taniela Tupou, who I still think's got a long way to go as a front rower, but, there were rumblings that he was pretty unhappy, particularly early in the year. So, yeah, interesting. Anyway, but back to my favorite point, my favorite topic. I think the Brumbies are the real deal, and I think they will beat the Crusaders. But that Crusaders Brumbies rivalry is enormous. It's I think that'll be a really difficult game. And then if they beat the Crusaders, they lock in a home final. Who knows what then happens against the Blues? I think you just roll the dice and have a crack because, that they will have. They win this week. They lock in second place. So that means the Blues then they've got everything to play for. They want that number one. I think the Brumbies will be pretty happy with second. Particularly given all of the media attention throughout the year has been, they're good, but we'll see what happens when the New Zealand teams come out. And I'm also not here saying that the we're world beaters and whatever, but how good is it to have a relatively competitive competition? Like, it's been really good to watch. It's becoming a much better product. Yeah, I just think we should enjoy it. Like, why do we have to have this Australia-New Zealand thing? Oh, Australia should only have 3 teams. I just think let's enjoy what we have. There are clearly 3 teams in Australia who are competitive and 2 that aren't. And I think that's on us. I think that's on Australian rugby to fix. And I think you could argue the same way with the Kiwis. They've got 3 that are competitive and 2 that are below standard. I think the fact that right now the team in 8th, I think the Highlanders, have 3 wins and they're going to make the finals. I think they probably need to rethink that. I think it's weird. I mean, I guess it happens in the NBA, but I think it's weird when you have more than half the teams make finals. Like, there's 12 teams, 8 final spots. I don't know. Does it devalue the product a little bit, or the achievement, making the finals? I guess the top 7 at the moment all have more wins than losses, but then there's a big drop from 7 to 8. I don't know. Maybe 6 is the number. Half. I think half's okay. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think on that, because that's yeah. I just feel like the first round of finals is kind of a nothing round because of the drop off. Maybe if we get further down the track and teams are all really competitive, games are really close and really exciting and all of that, and an 8 seed could potentially knock off a 1 seed, or I don't know exactly how the finals is going to work, but maybe in 3 or 4 years' time we think about doing that. I don't know. I just don't think that first week of finals is going to be all that exciting. I think it would be exciting if we had the old school, like, top 4, 1v4, 2v3, or 1v2, major minor thing. I think that would be more exciting. The loser of the 1v2 gets a second crack against the winner of the 3v4. Maybe that. I think that, in my view, would be more exciting. But I also get that you need to flesh out the finals for the possible broadcast money, I guess. Speaking of which, July is quickly approaching, which means England are on their way. And I think if you've watched any of what's happening up north in terms of their domestic rugby product, I think we should be a little bit worried. I know England underperformed in the Six Nations, but I don't think I'd be wrong in saying that France might be the best team in the world at the moment. Oh, I can hear all the Kiwis just screaming at me through their radios. But based on what I've seen, I think they might be the best team in the world. And then I think Ireland are also in that discussion. We obviously haven't seen the All Blacks this season, but just given what's happened domestically, come back to the pack a little bit, the New Zealand Super Rugby franchises, and just given how dominant France were and how dominant Ireland were against everyone but France, I think the Southern Hemisphere should be a little bit worried going into this next World Cup, because I think the French are going to make some noise. Home World Cup, I think they got the best halfback in the world. There's a few other players who I think are certainly in the discussion, but I think they might be the best team in the world at the moment. And I think that the discussion probably has to be France, Ireland, and New Zealand as the top 3. Maybe they're 1A, B, and C. But anyway, so I don't think we can discount England because I think 2 of the top 3 teams in the world are currently playing in the Six Nations. And I know there's a lot of chat about Eddie Jones and the players are sick of him and yada, 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 but I still think, given their domestic product and given the caliber of player that they are currently producing all across the paddock, I don't think we can count them out. And then I think the other crucial thing that's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, is the Reg 9 stuff with Quade Cooper, Samu Karevi, McMahon, Rory Arnold, Tolulatu, all of those guys who are playing overseas. Now, Reg 9 means that their clubs have to release them. That's fine. But the media circus around that might be challenging for the Wallabies to handle, coaches to handle, players to handle. We saw how it played out last year during the spring tour when Samu Karevi and Quade Cooper both didn't go on the spring tour. They played the game in Japan and then stayed there. And I think, that really highlights not necessarily the motivation, but where the clubs are at in terms of wanting to protect their asset. But having said that, in July they have to release them. So if Dave Rennie picks up the phone and calls one of the guys based overseas and says, I want you in the Wallaby squad, he doesn't have to accept, but if he does, the club has to release him. So that's one of the other things that I don't know if people understand. If you're on a Super Rugby contract, Australian Super Rugby contract, and you get picked for the Wallabies, then you have an obligation to fulfill that selection and play for the Wallabies. Just ask Tyrell Lomax what happens when you decline. Sorry, T. You can read between the lines there. But if you're playing overseas, you have right of refusal effectively, because the national body can't really do anything about you not wanting to play for the Wallabies because you're on a French rugby contract or a contract with an English rugby contract or whatever. No, it's not even an English rugby, but a contract with a club overseas. So there's nothing. Rugby Australia has no leverage, is what I'm trying to say, and the clubs over there do, because I know this happens. Clubs offer players more money if they don't make themselves eligible for their national teams. And I think in the case of some of the players who are currently playing in Japan and throughout Europe, they signed those contracts pre the new Giddo law revision, which I think is 35 tests or 30 tests. I can't remember exactly. So I think there's going to be, at least for the next couple of years, there's going to be a little bit of argy-bargy give and take, and it's probably going to be pretty disruptive for the Wallaby side. Now, having said all of that, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think for the first time in a long time, I think we have a really solid back row. Samu, Valentini, Hooper, Wilson, McWright, Scott Young. We have all of these really, really, really good back rowers. Some are verging on world class. I think Rob Valentini, what he's been doing with the Brumbies, my word, he's been impressive. And you pair him with someone like Hooper, who, has become the talisman for Australian rugby. I'm happy to say I was a huge, huge Hooper detractor, particularly earlier on in his career. But, something has happened. He's grown up, whatever. His game's matured, whatever. I think he's really, really important. But then, to have someone like McWright as well, it just makes it makes me smile. And then you've got someone like Samu who can cover 6 and 8. Caleb, Timu, we've got plenty of back rowers who I think Dave Rennie's going to have a tough time picking his back row. But I think the guys I just mentioned, I think some iteration of, and I'll name 4 guys: So some iteration of Valentini, Samu, Wilson, and Hooper, I think, is how it probably gets made up. And, 3 of those 4 guys are interchangeable in terms of being able to play number 6 and number 8, which is pretty exciting. I think the other thing that's exciting is what's happening in the halves. Jake Gordon seems to have lifted again. Tate McDermott's playing good footy. We've obviously got Nick White, but then the Lonergan guy is really good. Ryan Lonergan out of the Brumbies too. He's had some wins. He's had some runs on the board, doing some good things. I actually think his pass is better than White's. It's an objective front rower's opinion. Objective. Yeah, I mean, I played with Ryan, so that's probably why I think that. But then we look at, the fly half situation. So, there's obviously Matt Tamua who can play there, but I think his position is in the 12 jersey. Noah Lalesio, Rajan Pesitoa over at the Force. And I know Tim Horan anointed him early in the year. And Tim, you got to be careful with that, my man. I know you're excited about him, but just be careful with anointing him. But I think he is very good. I think he's a very good player, and I think he will become a very good player given some more time. Tane Edmed he's shown some stuff. Like I think he could be good. And then we obviously have James O'Connor as well. And then Quade Cooper is the sort of sleeping, looming shadow from over in Japan. So that's really exciting. There are some positions of concern. I think hooker is still a worry. There's no one that I think who's really separated themselves, and a lot of it comes down to the throw. I think Lachlan Lonergan, the other Lonergan boy, I think his throw is really good, but where he is going to face challenges is with his size at the next level. Can he sort of be the middleman in a scrum at the next level at his size? He's a little bit smaller than the prototypical hooker. Feliti Kaitu'u can't really throw consistently. Dave Parecki is probably been the form hooker with the Waratahs, but even his throw's a bit shaky. Jordan Gillespie can't hit the backside of a barn, so I think we just need to move on from him. So yeah, Alex Murphy's a bit the same up in Queensland. It is a concern, and that's why I can see why you might want to bring someone like Tolu Latu back. But Tolu Latu brings with him a lot of some challenges off field in the past. So I don't want to make any assumptions about that. But could he be a distraction potentially? So do you take the risk, or do you try and develop someone we have here? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I also don't know who's really the form hooker in Australia. Even Folau Faianga has really been superseded by Lonergan. And then, even the guy I like is Billy Pollard. I really like Billy Pollard. He just hasn't, I think he's 19 or 20. He's still got a bit of time that he needs to really develop his craft. But go and have a look at some of his highlights. He's an impressive footballer. He can scrummage. His line-out throw is not bad, but what he gives you around the park is Dane Coles-esque. Oh, look at me! Yeah, comparing him to Dane Coles. Wow, but I think he's that kind of athlete. He's not as big as Dane. He's probably not as natural as Dane, but he certainly gives you a lot of all of what you want and more in terms of the athleticism of a hooker. So, that's a position of concern for me. I think fullback is probably another one. Pataya, been talked about, Tom Banks, everyone every year we kind of say, yes, this is his year. He's going to do his thing, and it doesn't quite happen. And I think we're seeing that again. So, but, I think I'm really excited for the first time in a long time. I think we've got depth, we've got options, Lenny Katawi, Ray Simoni, and I guess it comes back to what Rennie wants to do in terms of some of that cohesion stuff that Ben Darwin talks about. If you haven't heard about cohesion and some of the calculations that Ben Darwin's making, go check it out. It's very impressive and sort of talks about, cohesion, guys playing lots of football together, the benefits of picking a 9-10 combo and a 10-12 combo and 12-13 combo, or a backline who've played lots of football together. And, we've seen that across a lot of sports. You could probably say that over the years, with some of the origin stuff, particularly Queensland origin, there are guys that may not necessarily have been the best player at that position. Justin Hodges is maybe a good example, but, within the structure, within that environment, within that backline was really, really impressive, for that cohesion thing, So, yeah, but I don't want to get too far into selections. That'll happen in a couple of weeks' time, just by the way. But I'm very excited, but I don't think we should count out what England are going to bring out over here, because I think they've got a point to prove after, by their standards, a pretty disappointing Six Nations. Oh, man. This is the one I want to talk about. Liz Cambage, get in the bin. So, I guess I've known about what happened with Liz for a while. For some of the previous work that I did, you obviously heard, you heard stories, and you heard from people who are involved, and most of the stories were pretty much the same. But for those of you who don't know, last year in the lead up to the Olympics, the Australian women's basketball team had a camp in Las Vegas, which is where Liz Cambage was living at the time. And they played a game, a prep game, which is why I love basketball, because you can just play games all the time, game intensity. Really hard to replicate that in rugby. But they were playing a warm-up game against Nigeria. And Liz had... And I imagine the Nigerian players were just getting a bit physical with her, trying to ruffle her feathers a bit, trying to get under her skin. Something happened. She turned around and said, "Go back to your third world country." Then a brawl ensued. And not long after that happened, Liz pulled out of the Olympics citing mental health issues. And look, when someone cites mental health issues, and I have talked about this before, they are to be taken seriously. But this is an example where someone has just taken the piss, done the wrong thing, and is completely unwilling to accept any responsibility for what they've done. And now you've got Andrew Bogut and Andrew Gaze, who I think are fairly reputable sources, saying that that's actually the PG version of what happened. And in all of this, Liz has played the victim. A couple of days ago in a Sparks uniform, sitting with her hand up above her head like this in a real relaxed position. She was more than happy to say, "I didn't feel supported by the Opals. My heart is with people who want to see me do the best that I can and want me to be the best that I can be and want to support me." But then why, like you can see, I'm confused. So you're saying you didn't feel supported. You're happy to take shots at the Opals, take shots at Basketball Australia. I'm not saying that organization's perfect. I've got my issues with Basketball Australia and the WNBL too. But I'm happy to be held accountable for what I say and do. No? So you caused a problem. And, the other ironic thing is Ezi Magbegor is a Nigerian migrant to Australia and is now playing for Australia. If I'm not wrong, Liz, you're Nigerian as well. And regardless, like, I get it, right? Like, in the heat of battle, sometimes you say something you shouldn't, or you do something you shouldn't. But the problem I have is the complete lack of remorse. 2, not wanting to be held accountable. And 3, just happy to play the victim. Happy to pull the mental health card because you felt no one would question you, whatever. So this all comes out. Then she goes on Twitter and says, "Oh, more will come to light," but isn't willing to provide that light. So here's what I'll say. Here's what I want. Whoever's got that footage, I'm sure there's footage because basketball coaches film everything. Whether BA has it, whether Nigeria basketball has it, I'm pretty sure Team USA was in that camp too. Just release that shit. Let's get it done. Because drama seems to follow Liz Cambage, and I think we're all tired of it. And, you look at the Las Vegas Aces, they played better without her. Good basketballer, bad person. There, I said it. I might get in trouble for that one. But look, I think it's really important now for Liz to be held accountable because she seems to just do and say whatever she wants. Then she goes on TV and cries and says she's having a hard time with her mental health, and everyone forgives her. Like I said, mental health should be taken really seriously, but Liz doing what she does, exploiting it, is part of the reason why it's not taken seriously a lot of the time because it's seen because people like her exploit it. And, a coach will have an instance where a player exploits it, and that's the view that they take on that issue from there on. So anyone who cites mental health issues, like, we'll just push through it. And I'm not saying that's the right approach to take, and I'm not excusing that approach. I'm just saying that's what happens. You have a bad experience, and you carry that with you. So, Liz, firstly, maybe just apologize. Hold yourself accountable. Have some respect. Do the right thing. So frustrating. Release the footage. Whoever's got it, release it. That's all I'm going to say on that. The other thing that happened this week, which I fucking enjoyed, is Draymond Green getting ejected after, it was a hard foul. Did he deserve to get ejected? Maybe, maybe not. His response was to flip off the crowd, dance around, flip off the crowd, head straight down to the locker room, get changed, head home, and record a podcast and talk about it. And then all the media members turned on him and said, "Oh, we can't do that. That's disrespectful. That's that." How's it disrespectful? He's just doing what you do. What, are you upset because you didn't get to ask him about it? Shut up. And I have a huge amount of respect for Draymond as a player. I think he's hugely important to that Golden State Warriors team. But I have a lot of respect for him as a broadcaster. Someone who just gets up to the mic and just goes for an hour. It's really impressive. It's super impressive, and it's super hard. It's super hard to just sit in front of a mic and go and go and go. And I was so excited when I saw the notification, a couple of hours after the game that Draymond had recorded his podcast. I was like, yes, he's going to go in. Which he did, but he was respectful. And I truly think this is where media is going, right? The future of media is maybe we don't need the media. Caption that, soundbite that. But seriously, you think about it, right? Most athletes now have some kind of following, some kind of platform. And this has been happening for a long time. Gilbert Arenas used to have his Agent Zero blog with NBA.com. I remember reading those as a kid and thinking those were super cool. There was one that in particular that stuck with me where he talked about, trying to come back from an injury. He'd had a really good week at practice, and the trainer said, "Yes, we'll make a game time decision." And so he let on game day left his house, went in for shoot around, was so confident that he was going to pass his physical. He didn't bring his game day suit because he was like, "I don't need my suit. I'm here. I'm doing shoot around. I'm going to do my shoot around, pass my physical. I'm going to play." And then the trainer he didn't pass. He didn't get through the physical. He didn't get through the warm up. And he talked about having to shower, go home to get his suit. So driving home to get his suit, and then driving back and, having to sit on the bench. And there was a part in there where he talked about, thinking about, well, what, would life be easier if I just, slammed this car into the wall and ended it? I guess that stuck with me. And to me, that was, and I think that's why shouts Gilbert Arenas, Agent Zero is doing so well in podcast land and media land, is because he was getting those reps while he was a player. He was writing while he was a player. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is this has been happening for a while. It's been a slow build to this. So most players now have a platform, whether that's their social media, whether that's a website, whether that's a media company they're involved in or invested in, whatever it is, they have a platform. So, and most of those platforms, most of the things that they do on social media or, on their podcasts, on their website, they get picked up by national news, national media, and if not, often will get picked up, by some form of media, whether it's regional, local, whatever, national, whatever. So the question is, now you have that platform, the things you say and do get picked up by the media anyway. Do you really need to sit there at a post-match press conference and answer questions when you could just go home and do it, write on your blog, write it on your, tweet from the locker room what you think, or go record a podcast like Draymond did, share your thoughts, share your views, and then everyone on ESPN, on SportsCenter will talk about it for a week. I mean, I'm talking about it. I know you made that podcast for me. No, but this is what I'm saying. I think the future of media is less formal than it used to be. Like, formal might not be the right word, but, I think the days of reporters standing around, locker rooms, yelling questions at players, or sitting in rooms, doing press conferences and stuff, I think those days are numbered. And I think now, as a media member, relationships are more important than ever. Purely because players have their own platforms. They actually don't necessarily need you to benefit the sport or to benefit their own brand or to benefit their narrative. They can go and take their views, take hold of the narrative, and share it themselves. So I think that, the next 10 years of broadcast journalism and in general is going to be really interesting as more and more players start to see the value in investing in their own platforms, having their own podcast. Artie Sevilla has a podcast, and doing things on their own. Tuivasa Sheck, he is a I would say a social media influencer. I'd say there are more people that follow him for his social media influence than his rugby prowess. So I think this is where media is headed. And I think, the media members who got upset about it, I can see why you're upset. I can see, I didn't get to ask Draymond a question, whatever. Just go onto his podcast. It's out there. He told you exactly what he thought. And I think in a way it's more real. It's unfiltered. It's uncensored. He can just say what he wants and we move on. I think it's really hard when you're sitting at a table and you got mics in front of you and you got your coach on your right and you got another player on the left and your PR person is down there giving you a death stare because they know the hard question is coming. I think it's really hard to give a real answer. And you see this with the Australian cricket team. They're so rehearsed. So let's just lean in, give them a platform. So as media members, allow them to come on your show and talk their shit, or give them their own show as part of your network. Give them some ownership of that. I see that as the way, mainstream media, big media benefits from this new world. Let's just get on board. Because I truly think the days of the press conference and the locker room interviews and that sort of thing are numbered. And I think there's going to be more informal, players voicing their opinions via podcasts, via maybe it's TikTok, maybe TikTok videos, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I think they're going to do a lot of that themselves now. And the way that, we stay relevant as media networks and things is to invite them in, open up the tent, let them do their thing. And I think it's really awesome, like getting your reps as a player. You want to go into media, start a podcast, start writing, start recording yourself commentating while you're watching games, because that's how you're going to get the reps. And then when you finish, it's an easy transition for you because you've been doing it. You've been doing it for the last 10 years of your career. You're used to talking into a camera. You're used to talking into a mic. You're used to tapping those keyboards. Used to coming in with some hot and spicy takes. And you've got the relationships with those in your sport and potentially in other sports as well. So you become a trusted member. So that's how we as mainstream media benefit. So let's just get on board. I like how I'm calling myself mainstream media. I'm not mainstream. I'm just saying, don't get upset. Get on board. I think that's it for this week. Done a lot of talking tonight. I hope you enjoyed this one. I promise I've got some guests. I promise they're coming. They are coming. I promise they're coming back. Soon. Just it's been a rough couple of weeks. So there'll be some guests, be some interesting stories, plenty of stuff in the works. But before I go, thank you to thecover.com.au. Make sure you get there. Make sure you check out the Fifth and Dribble podcast, the Daily Dribble podcast. Make sure you check out Tobias Canning's NRL column. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter because that's the main communications channel for everything that we do here. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope that you will continue to listen, even though I haven't got any guests. I haven't had any guests the last couple of weeks. Lydia Williams is coming back in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm going to put out on my Instagram, ask her some questions. We'll do a mailbag episode with Lydia. For another week, I'm Liam. This is the Give 'em Liam podcast on the Cover Podcast Network, and we'll see you soon.